When I look back at my life, there are moments that stand out like scars on skin, unhealed, tender to the touch, no matter how many years have passed. And if I'm honest, most of those moments lead back to her. Elena, the woman who broke me in ways I didn't think a human heart could actually break. I used to think love was strong enough to survive anything, distance, hardship, even betrayal. But what I learned is that love alone is never enough. It takes honesty, trust, and the will to fight for each other. And Alina, she had her own battles, her own secrets, and one day those secrets devoured us both. I met her when I was 34. At that age, you've lived enough to think you know better, but still young enough to believe in magic. She wasn't the most beautiful woman in the room, but she had that kind of presence that demanded you notice her. Sharp eyes that seemed to study everything, a laugh that cut through noise like a blade through silk, and a subtle sadness behind her smile that made you want to hold her closer, even before you knew her story. We started simple coffee dates, late-night drives, sitting by the river with takeout boxes, talking about everything and nothing. She told me about her failed marriage, how her ex-husband had been emotionally distant, how she had spent years feeling invisible in her own home. I told her about my lonely apartment, the routine of work and gym, and how I sometimes felt like life was passing me by without asking what I wanted. With her, I felt seen. That's the only way I can describe it. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. It didn't take long before she was staying at my place more often than her own. My apartment, once quiet and predictable, filled with her perfume, her laughter, her chaos. I loved it. I loved the way she'd sing off-key in the kitchen while cooking, the way she'd steal my hoodies, the way she'd press her cold feet against mine in bed just to hear me groan. It felt real. It felt alive. But there were cracks even in those first months, cracks I chose to ignore. She'd disappear sometimes, hours unaccounted for, excuses that didn't quite line up. I was with a friend, she'd say, or my mom needed me. I wanted to believe her, so I did. But there was always that flicker of doubt, a shadow creeping in when she wasn't around. One night while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I shouldn't have looked, I know that. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, especially when mixed with fear. The message was from someone saved under a simple initial. M. The words were harmless enough. Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. But harmless words can gut you when you read them in the wrong context. My chest tightened and for a moment I couldn't breathe. I put the phone back exactly where it was, pretending my hands weren't shaking. She came out of the shower, smiling, wrapped in one of my towels, kissed me like nothing was wrong. And I let her. I kissed her back, pretending I hadn't just glimpsed the edge of a truth I wasn't ready to face. The weeks that followed were a storm inside me. I didn't ask her about the message. I wanted to catch her in a lie, but I also didn't want to destroy the illusion we'd built. Every laugh, every touch, every moment with her became poisoned with suspicion. I found myself watching her too closely, analyzing her words, memorizing the times she left the apartment. I was becoming someone I hated, paranoid, bitter, restless. Then came the night that broke me in half. She had told me she was going out with a friend, a girl from her yoga class. Something in me snapped. I couldn't just sit and wonder anymore. I got in my car and followed her. Like some pathetic detective in a cheap movie, I trailed her through the city streets, headlights dimmed, heart pounding so loud I thought it might give me away. She didn't go to any yoga class. She pulled into a restaurant on the edge of town, the kind of place with dim lighting and live jazz, and then I saw him. A man tall, confident, younger than me. He walked straight to her, kissed her on the cheek like they'd done it 1,000 times, and slid into the booth beside her. They laughed, leaned close, hands brushing across the table. It wasn't just dinner. It was intimacy. It was betrayal written in body language so clear it burned into me. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, watching through the glass until I couldn't anymore. My chest felt hollow, my hands numb on the steering wheel. I wanted to storm inside, to drag her out, to scream until the whole restaurant knew what she was. But I didn't. Instead, I drove home, the silence in my car louder than any scream could have been. That night I didn't sleep. I lay awake with her side of the bed cold and empty, waiting for the sound of her key in the lock. And when she finally came in, hours later, smelling faintly of perfume and smoke, she slipped into bed beside me and whispered, "I missed you." I stared at the ceiling, and for the first time since I met her, I didn't believe a word. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, hummed to herself in the kitchen, kissed me on the cheek as if the night before had never existed. And I played along. I smiled, nodded, pretended to be the man she thought I was, or maybe the man she wanted me to be, blind, forgiving, easy to manipulate. Inside, though, I was unraveling. Every sip of coffee tasted like ash. Every word out of her mouth felt like poison. I told myself I needed proof, something undeniable, before I confronted her. Maybe it was cowardice. Maybe I just wasn't ready to lose her. Love, even when corrupted, has a way of chaining you down. So I started paying attention more carefully, watching her, noticing the little things I had once brushed off. The way she always set her phone face down on the table. The sudden silences when she answered calls in the other room. The excuses that came too easily, too rehearsed. One evening she said she had to work late. I knew better. I followed her again, this time with my stomach in knots and my heart already preparing for the blow. She didn't go to work. She went to his apartment. I parked a block away and sat there like a fool, watching the lights flicker on in his window, knowing damn well what was happening inside. My hands trembled so badly I had to grip the steering wheel just to keep them steady. Hours passed before she finally came out. Her hair was messy, her jacket half-zipped, her face glowing in a way it hadn't when she was with me. She got into her car, and I followed her home, close enough to keep her in sight but far enough not to be noticed. By the time we both pulled into the parking lot of my building, my chest felt like it might cave in from the weight of what I'd seen. That night I couldn't keep quiet anymore. As soon as she walked through the door, I asked her straight, "Where were you?" My voice cracked, but it wasn't anger that broke it, it was fear. Fear of the truth I already knew. She froze just for a second, then shrugged. "Work ran late." I laughed, a bitter sound that hurt coming out. "Don't lie to me, I saw you, at his place." Her eyes widened, then narrowed just as quickly, like a switch flipping inside her. "You followed me." The way she said it, cold, accusing, made me feel like I was the one who had done something wrong. My chest tightened with rage. "Don't turn this around on me. Who is he? How long has this been going on?" For a moment I thought she might come clean. I saw something flicker in her eyes, guilt, maybe even shame. But then her walls shot up again. "You don't understand," she whispered. "It's complicated." Complicated. That word cut deeper than any confession could have, because it wasn't denial. It wasn't even an apology. It was an admission wrapped in excuses. I wanted to scream, to break something, to demand answers she clearly wasn't willing to give. Instead, I sank into the couch, head in my hands, feeling years older than I was. Why, Alina? Wasn't I enough? She sat beside me but didn't touch me. "It's not about you," she said softly. You're good to me, better than I deserve, but there are things I can't explain, things you wouldn't forgive if you knew." Her words hung between us like smoke, suffocating and bitter. I didn't press her. I didn't ask for details. Maybe I was afraid of the answers. Maybe I already knew enough. For the next few weeks, we lived in a fragile, twisted version of our old life. She stayed with me, kissed me, laughed with me, but I couldn't shake the image of her with him. Every touch felt tainted. Every smile felt like a lie. I was a prisoner in my own home, chained by love and fear of losing her completely. Then one night I couldn't take it anymore. I told her I needed the truth, all of it, or we were done. She looked at me for a long time, her face unreadable, then said the words that would haunt me. "If you really want the truth, you won't like what you hear." And she was right, because what she told me wasn't just about betrayal. It was about a life she had lived in shadows, secrets I never could have imagined. The man she was seeing wasn't just some fling or rebound. He was tied to her past in ways that made my blood run cold. She admitted she had never truly left her ex-husband. that their marriage had been broken in name only, but legally, emotionally, financially, she was still bound to him. The man I had seen her with wasn't just some stranger. He was her ex. Or maybe I should say, the man who had never really stopped being her husband. I felt the floor drop out beneath me. All those nights she had spent with me, all the promises she had whispered, all the dreams we had shared, they were built on a foundation of lies. I wasn't her partner. I was her escape. And yet, even with the truth laid bare, I couldn't walk away. Not yet. Love is a strange, twisted thing. It keeps you standing in burning rooms, convincing yourself you can breathe. That night when she fell asleep beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling again. But this time, it wasn't just betrayal gnawing at me. It was the chilling realization that I didn't know the woman lying next to me at all. After her confession, everything between us shifted. I couldn't look at her the same way, couldn't touch her without feeling the ghost of his hands on her skin. Yet, in the strangest way, I also couldn't let her go. It was like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing the ground beneath you is crumbling, but refusing to step back because you're mesmerized by the view. The days blurred together. I went through the motions of my life, but inside I was consumed by questions. Why had she chosen me if she was still tethered to him? What did I mean to her? A distraction, a safe haven, or just a convenient lie she told herself? I wanted answers, but every time I asked, she would shut down, her eyes growing distant, as if she were locking me out of a room I had no key to. One Friday night, after too much whiskey and too many sleepless hours, I pressed harder than ever before. I demanded to know what hold he had over her. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and exhaustion. "You think it's that simple," she whispered. "You think I can just leave him behind." My chest tightened. "You already did. You left him when you came to me. Or was that just another lie?" She stood, packing, running her fingers through her hair like she was pulling at invisible knots. "You don't get it. I tried to leave him, I did. But he has power. Over me, over my life. It's not something I can just walk away from." Her voice cracked, and for the first time I saw fear in her. Real fear. Not of me, not of losing me, but of him. That night she broke down and told me more than she ever had before. About how their marriage wasn't just about love or lack thereof. It was entangled in debts, secrets, and mistakes she had made long before she met me. He wasn't just her ex. He was a man who could destroy her if he wanted to. I wanted to believe she exaggerated, that she was using drama to excuse her betrayal. But the way her hands shook, the way her voice trembled, it was too raw to be fake. Still, that didn't erase the truth. She was still with him. That night, when she finally fell asleep in my bed, I slipped out to the balcony with a cigarette I hadn't touched in years. The smoke burned my throat, but it was nothing compared to the burn in my chest. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. Was I willing to keep living in this half-truth, to share the woman I loved with a man she swore she couldn't escape? The answer should have been easy. Walk away. Save yourself. But when you love someone deeply enough, logic becomes irrelevant. I told myself I could be patient, that maybe one day she would cut ties with him completely and choose me. But deep down, I already knew waiting for her was like waiting for rain in a desert. The breaking point came sooner than I expected. A week later, I came home earlier than usual. The apartment was quiet, too quiet, and something in me knew before I even opened the bedroom door. There she was, sitting on the bed with her phone in her hand, whispering in a voice softer than I had ever heard her use with me. I didn't have to ask who it was. I didn't need to. Her head snapped up when she saw me, her face pale as if I had caught her committing a crime. Maybe I had. "Still complicated?" I asked, my voice steady but my hands trembling. Tears welled in her eyes. She didn't even bother denying it. She just whispered, "I'm sorry." Those words, two little words, were supposed to mean something, supposed to heal. But they only shattered me more. Sorry wasn't enough to erase the nights I lay awake beside her, wondering who she really belonged to. Sorry didn't erase the fact that I had given her everything, while she had been dividing herself between me and him. I left the apartment that night without another word. I walked through the city streets aimlessly, my chest hollow, my mind screaming with questions I'd never get answers to. Part of me wanted to hate her. Part of me still loved her. And the worst part was realizing those two truths could exist side by side, tearing me apart. Over the next few days, she called, she texted, she showed up at my door. I ignored her at first. I thought I was done. But love, real, toxic, painful love, doesn't just vanish because you want it to. Eventually, I let her back in. And that was my biggest mistake. Because when I let her back into my life, I opened the door to something far darker than betrayal. Something that went beyond lies and infidelity. Something that would drag me into a world I wasn't prepared for. A world where love wasn't the only thing at stake. Taking her back wasn't a decision I made in a single moment. It was more like slipping into a current I couldn't fight against. She showed up at my door one night drenched from the rain, mascara streaked across her cheeks, begging me not to give up on her. And I caved. Not because I believed her promises, but because I couldn't stand to see her broken like that. For a while, things seemed almost normal again. She laughed more, stayed by my side more often, and tried harder to prove her loyalty. But I could feel the cracks beneath the surface, like walking on ice that groaned under your feet with every step. I told myself I was imagining it, that paranoia was just a scar left from what she had done. But the truth has a way of bleeding through no matter how much you try to bandage it. One night as we lay in bed, she whispered that she loved me more than she had ever loved anyone. I wanted to believe it, but there was a hollowness in her voice, a hesitation that didn't match the words. My gut twisted, but I stayed silent. I'd learned by then that pressing her only pushed her further away. It was a Tuesday evening when everything came undone. I had gone out for groceries, nothing more than a quick errand. When I returned, I noticed the faint smell of cologne in the apartment, one that wasn't mine. My chest tightened and the bag slipped from my hands. I walked through each room slowly, methodically, as if moving any faster would make the truth crash down harder. The bathroom was damp, steam still clinging to the mirror. A wet towel hung over the door. And then I heard it, her voice, low and urgent, speaking on the phone. I stood outside the bedroom door listening. She was pleading with him, the man I had tried so hard to erase from our lives. "Please, just give me time," she whispered. "I can't leave him yet. He'll find out. It's not safe." My knees almost buckled. Not safe. The words repeated in my head like an echo. Who wasn't safe? Her, me, both of us. I opened the door and she froze mid-sentence. Her phone slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor. The look in her eyes wasn't guilt, it was terror. "Who is he really?" I asked, my voice colder than I had ever heard it. She didn't answer. Instead, she shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks, as if silence could shield me from something worse than betrayal. That night, after hours of pushing, she finally confessed pieces of the truth. The man wasn't just her husband. He was involved in things darker than I could have imagined. Illegal dealings, debts owed to people you don't cross, favors bought with blood and fear. She had tried to leave him, but every time she did, he pulled her back in with threats, with reminders of what he controlled. I sat there in shock, trying to reconcile the woman I loved with the world she was entangled in. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about heartbreak or infidelity. It was about survival. The next days were a blur of paranoia. I noticed cars parked too long near my building, strangers watching a little too closely. She insisted it was nothing, that I was imagining things, but I could feel the walls closing in. Then came the night that changed everything. We had argued earlier, about him, about her lies, about the danger creeping into our lives. She stormed out, saying she needed air. Hours passed and she didn't come back. I tried calling, but her phone went straight to voicemail. At 2 a.m., a knock rattled my door. When I opened it, she stood there, trembling, a bruise blooming across her cheek. My stomach dropped. "He knows," she whispered. He knows about us." The fear in her voice was unlike anything I had heard before. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing, begging me not to leave her. And in that moment, I knew two things with terrifying clarity. First, I couldn't keep living like this, chained to her chaos, drowning in lies. Second, walking away might no longer be an option. Because once he knew about me, I wasn't just the man she betrayed with. I was a target. I didn't expect it to end quietly. In my mind, for weeks, I'd imagined screaming matches, broken plates, maybe even police lights flashing red and blue outside my window. But the truth is, when the reckoning finally came, it was almost still. It was a Tuesday. The city outside looked the same as it always did, trains screeching, people hurrying, a sea of strangers. But inside my apartment, there was this strange, heavy calm, like the silence after a storm when the world doesn't quite know what to do next. She was sitting on the couch when I walked in, legs crossed, her phone abandoned on the table. No makeup, no armor, just her. For a moment my heart betrayed me. I remembered the nights when just seeing her like that made me feel at peace, like I was home. But then I looked closer, and I saw the distance. I saw the emptiness between us, bigger than any lie or any affair could explain. "I know," I said simply, standing there in the doorway. My voice was steady, but inside I was burning. "I know everything." Her lips parted, but no words came out. She blinked, and for the first time in months I saw something real in her eyes: fear. Not fear of me, but fear of being exposed. Fear of losing the game she'd been playing behind my back. I didn't scream. I didn't throw her things out the window like in the movies. Instead, I sat down across from her. My knees felt weak, but my voice stayed strong. "You had choices. You could have told me you weren't happy. You could have walked away before dragging me through this hell. But you chose lies. You chose betrayal." She finally spoke, her voice small, almost breaking. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I swear I cut her off. You meant every choice you made. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise." The weight of it settled in the air between us. For a long time, neither of us said anything. The silence was suffocating, but it was also freeing, because I realized I didn't need her explanations anymore. I didn't need to untangle her web of excuses or rewrite the history of what we'd been. I stood up. "You don't get to break me," I said, my voice low but sharp. "You don't get to define who I am after this." Her eyes welled with tears, but I didn't reach for her. Not this time. I grabbed my jacket, my keys, and walked out the door without looking back. The hallway felt endless, but every step was lighter than the last. For weeks after, I was lost. I won't lie. Nights were the hardest. I'd stare at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head, my body aching for her even while my mind cursed her name. Healing didn't come overnight. It came in fragments, in small, quiet victories, in mornings where I finally woke up without feeling like the world had caved in. And somewhere in that mess, I found myself again. I picked up old hobbies, started writing more, reconnected with friends I'd pushed aside. I began to rebuild, not for her, not for anyone else, but for me. Looking back now, I don't see myself as the man who was betrayed. I see myself as the man who survived, the man who walked through fire and didn't let it consume him. Do I still think of her sometimes? Yeah. Do I wonder how things might have been different if honesty had been part of our story from the start? Of course. But I don't let those thoughts chain me anymore. They're just ghosts in the rearview mirror. Because at the end of it all, betrayal doesn't define love, and it doesn't define me. What defines me is how I chose to rise after the fall. And though my scars still ache when the night gets too quiet, they're proof that I lived, that I fought, and that I'm still standing. And that's enough.